Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. It is your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Email me for pricing. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing details. Today we are discussing a lovely 2018 launch from Richard and Maria Habring of Habring Watches in Austria. Habring is a name that is revered among watch collectors because the pieces are practical, durable, accessible, and rare. You can see they have individualized serial numbers between the lugs, and the numbers are always rare. You can see this one is number 93 in the line. So you get a combination of innovation, exclusivity, and accessibility that's not common in the independent watchmaking space. The timepiece is classically designed and classically sized, all in stainless steel, 38.5 millimeters in diameter. It is 12.3 millimeters thick as I measure it, and 46.1 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip with a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. We'll throw the watch on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, and it wears beautifully, comfortably, short across the wrist. I can recommend this watch for a wrist as small as 14 centimeters circumference, and it has a sloped flank and a relatively flat profile, so it will fit underneath the cuff. The watch is incredibly comfortable. And being manual wind, it's even a little bit thinner than its Valjoux 7750 based architecture would imply. It's a very compact watch that'll fit under any cuff, and you might even be able to fit it on a 13.5 centimeter circumference wrist. Strap is high gloss, large rectangular scale, symmetrical scale, black alligator leather with a folded edge and a monotone stitch. Now this is a very luxurious strap. First of all, gator is upscale. Second, when you have large symmetrical scales, you know you're looking at the most expensive cut of the material. On the bottom, you can see calfskin. And this is a Parisian-made Jean Rousseau handcrafted strap. This is the OEM supplier to FP Journe, and we often like to upgrade a watch that comes in on a Jean Rousseau strap. We'll generally spec a color we think flatters the watch, and this formal black really works with the salmon dial. You can also see that they come with pull-tab spring bars, so you just pull the tab and the strap pops right off the case. We have here a simple, polished, unsigned pin buckle, and that's one of several vintage cues on the watch. Historically, pin buckles weren't always signed. Also, historically, you would see dress timepieces even with strap tool holes in the lugs on the assumption that the owner may wish to swap straps, and historically would see that crowns were not signed with a logo or branding, and that continues through to the dial. Let's take a quick look at some of the elements of the case, though. You can see the lugs are very squared off, which is a vintage look. Satin finish longitudinal mid-case. The bezels step back a little bit from the case band to visually thin it. Then it has a small vertical lip, a large conical profile, and then a flange abutting the sapphire. And we also have a Monopusher. This is, of course, the Chrono-Felix Monopusher model. The Chrono-Felix is a riff on the Felix series from Habring, but the dial is a riff on antiquity. First, the modern elements, vertical satination, salmon coloration, and then these spectacular metallized individual indices and numeral 12. You can see how they are actually mirror profiles on the dial. At the center, we have mirror-polished Dauphine hands, and then chronograph minutes and chronograph seconds. Those hands have been blackened. We also have sunken and concentric pattern subregisters. Of course, Habring is based in Austria, and little 2 is your reminder that it's not just former IWC and Lange watchmaker Richard Habring behind the brand, but also Maria Habring, his wife. They are a team, and you get both when you buy one of the watches. Now, the watch does include a hacking or stop seconds function, so that's important to note. And because it's a 7750 architecture, it has a semi-instantaneous jumping minute. More antiquity again. We have these little markers at 3 and 6 minutes on the chronograph minutes display. You'll be able to see that semi-instantaneous jump here. The reason you have the 3 and the 6 marked is because historically, long-distance phone calls were billed in 3-minute increments, so in the middle of the last century, when that could be quite expensive, you would have those increments marked so you didn't go over time. Now, turning things over, immediately you're going to recognize this as a 7750 architecture. Everyone knows that minute jumper. Everyone recognizes this cam, start-stop lever, the hammer that recenters, the little clip that acts as a clutch spring for the lateral clutch that applies that little oscillating pinion you see right next to the chronograph center wheel. So this is all very familiar. What's not familiar is the origin of the parts, most of which are fabricated by Habring or its suppliers inside of Austria. They try to be as nationally self-sufficient as possible. So while the architecture is Valjoux or ETA, the parts are distinctively Habring. Now, what's going on here? Well, a lot. We have satination on the chronograph bridge. We have bluing of certain screws, polishing of other screws. We have engine turning on the 3/4 plate that sits on top of the train and the barrel. And then we've got a partially skeletonized balance cock. We have blued screws, we have polished screws. They serve different purposes here. And you can see that the base plate has been media blasted, the balance cock, as well as the chronograph start-stop lever and the hammer, also the reset hammer. All of this has been satinated, and you can see that the actual hammer that falls on the cam underneath the hammer lever, that's also been polished, and it's not easy to differentially finish these parts that are pressed together. So specs: 30 meters water resistant, manual wind, 48-hour power reserve. We have hacking or stop seconds, a high-grade balance, a chronometer grade hairspring. And so you've got that 48-hour power reserve and a cam oscillating pinion system. So here's the cam, here's the oscillating pinion. Look right under my finger, you'll see it moving. It's a very, very small lateral clutch. An oscillating pinion system often results in very little play when you start it up because oscillating pinions have less play than a conventional lateral clutch. And while they are universal to 7750 architectures, it's easy to forget that though the 7750 is ubiquitous, oscillating pinions are not in the industry as a whole, and they're making a real comeback at De Bethune, Richard Mille, and F.P. Journe, precisely because they give you the beauty of a conventional lateral clutch, but they also give you a level of precision more akin to a vertical clutch. And the tuning of the cam, though this is not a column wheel chronograph, Richard Habring and his crew have created something that feels better than most of the column wheels you'll ever encounter. So this is a spectacular watch made almost entirely inside of Austria by a dynamic husband and wife team, low volume, exclusivity, and a look that will look great 100 years hence. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.